Maya Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she carried another heavy tray of plates to table 12. The lunch rush at Romano's restaurant was always busy, but today felt even worse. Her feet hurt and her back ached from bending over tables all morning. She had been working at this fancy Italian restaurant in Manhattan for 2 years now, and every day felt the same. The restaurant sat right in the middle of the financial district, where rich business people came to eat expensive food and make important deals. Maya watched them through tired eyes as they talked about millions of dollars like she talked about her grocery list. These people wore suits that cost more than she made in 3 months. When the last lunch customer finally left, Maya sat down in the back corner booth with a heavy sigh. She pulled out a worn notebook from her apron pocket and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with strange symbols and marks that looked nothing like English. To anyone watching, it would look like random scratches, but to Maya, these were words from long ago. She had been studying ancient languages since she was 12 years old. Her grandfather had started teaching her before he died. He was a smart man who worked at a university, teaching students about old civilizations and forgotten languages. When Maya was little, he would sit with her for hours, showing her how people wrote thousands of years ago. "Maya, these languages tell us stories," her grandfather used to say. "They show us how people lived, what they believed, and what they knew. Every symbol has meaning. Every word has power." After he died, Maya kept studying on her own. She bought old textbooks from garage sales and spent hours in the public library. She learned about Sumerian writing, ancient Greek, and old forms of Hebrew and Arabic. Most people thought she was crazy for spending her free time this way. "Why do you waste time with dead languages?" her coworker Jenny often asked. "Those people are all gone. Nobody speaks that stuff anymore." But Maya did not think they were dead. When she read these old texts, she felt connected to people from long ago. She could almost hear their voices telling her about their lives, their hopes, and their fears. It was like having conversations with ghosts, but good ghosts who wanted to share their wisdom. Today, Maya was working on translating a piece of ancient Sumerian text she had found online. The symbols were tricky, and she had to think hard about each one. Sumerian was one of the first written languages in the world, used by people who lived in what is now Iraq over 4,000 years ago. As she worked, she did not notice the man in the expensive gray suit who walked into the restaurant. He was tall and thin, with dark hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. He moved quietly and chose a table in the corner, away from other people. "Maya, you have a customer," called Tony, the restaurant manager. "Table 15. Maya quickly put away her notebook and grabbed her order pad. She walked over to the man's table with a smile, even though she was tired. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Romano's. Can I start you with something to drink?" The man looked up at her with sharp blue eyes. He seemed nervous, looking around the restaurant like he was worried someone might be watching him. "Just water, please, and I need a few minutes to look at the menu." "Of course, sir. Take your time." Maya brought him water and left him alone. She noticed that he had a leather briefcase next to his chair, and that he kept checking his phone. When his phone rang, he answered it quickly and spoke in a very quiet voice. She could not hear what he was saying, but he looked worried. After 20 minutes, the man ordered a simple pasta dish and a glass of red wine. Maya brought his food and refilled his water glass. As she worked, she noticed papers sticking out of his briefcase. The papers had writing on them, but it was not normal English writing. It looked like ancient symbols. Maya tried not to stare, but she was curious. The symbols looked familiar, like something she had seen in her grandfather's books. But why would a businessman in a fancy suit have papers with ancient writing? The man ate slowly and kept looking at his phone. He seemed to be waiting for something or someone. When he finished eating, he pulled out the papers from his briefcase and spread them on the table. Maya could see them better now as she cleaned nearby tables. Her heart started beating faster. Those were definitely ancient symbols, and they looked like Aramaic script. Aramaic was a language that people spoke in the Middle East over 2,000 years ago. It was the language that Jesus probably spoke. But mixed in with the ancient symbols, she could see modern English words and numbers. Why would someone mix ancient writing with modern business papers? Maya had never seen anything like it. The man gathered up his papers quickly when he saw other customers coming into the restaurant. He paid his bill with cash and left a good tip. As he walked toward the door, he dropped something. Maya hurried over to help. "Excuse me, sir. You dropped this." She handed him a small piece of paper that had fallen from his briefcase. On it, she could clearly see Aramaic symbols mixed with what looked like mathematical formulas. The man's face went white when he saw that she was looking at the paper. "Thank you," he said quickly, taking it from her hand. Do you know what this is?" Maya hesitated. She could tell him that she could read ancient languages, but that might sound crazy. Most people did not believe that a waitress could understand such things. "It looks like old writing," she said carefully. The man stared at her for a long moment, then quickly left the restaurant without saying another word. Maya went back to work, but she could not stop thinking about the strange papers and the nervous man with the briefcase. Something told her that this was not the last time she would see him. 3 days passed before Maya saw the strange man again. She had been thinking about him and his mysterious papers every day. During her breaks, she looked up information about mixing ancient languages with modern writing, but she could not find anything that made sense. On Thursday evening, the man came back to Romano's. Maya recognized him immediately. He wore the same type of expensive suit, but this time it was dark blue. He carried the same leather briefcase and had the same nervous look in his eyes. "Good evening, sir," Maya said as she approached his table. "Water to start?" The man nodded but did not really look at her. He was too busy watching the other people in the restaurant. "Yes, water. And maybe some bread." Maya brought his water and a basket of warm bread. The man ordered chicken with vegetables but barely touched his food when it arrived. He spent most of his time looking at papers from his briefcase and talking on his phone in whispers. Maya tried to act normal, but she kept glancing over at his table. She could see more papers with strange writing, and this time there were also photographs of old stone tablets and ancient books. What kind of business needed pictures of ancient artifacts? Around 8 o'clock, the restaurant started to get busy with the dinner crowd. Maya was carrying a tray of drinks to another table when she heard the man's phone ring. The ringtone was very loud and he answered it quickly. "Hartwell speaking," he said in a sharp voice. Maya almost dropped her tray. Hartwell. That name sounded familiar, but she could not remember where she had heard it. The man, Mr. Hartwell, talked on his phone for several minutes. He sounded angry and worried at the same time. Maya heard words like timeline, documents, and authentication, but she could not understand what he was talking about. Suddenly, Mr. Hartwell stood up quickly. His chair scraped against the floor and his briefcase fell over. Papers scattered everywhere and his phone clattered to the ground. "I have to go," he said into his phone as he bent down to pick it up. "We'll discuss this tomorrow." Maya hurried over to help him collect his papers. As she picked them up, her eyes grew wide. These were not just random ancient symbols. These were real Aramaic texts, and she could read parts of them. The papers showed translations of ancient mathematical concepts, but they were mixed with modern computer language and legal terms. One paper had a heading that said, "Algorithm Development, Historical Precedent Research." Another showed pictures of Babylonian tablets with notes about computational patterns written in the margins. "Thank you," Mr. Hartwell said as Maya handed him the papers. His hands were shaking slightly. "You're welcome," Maya replied. She wanted to ask him about the ancient writing, but something in his eyes warned her to stay quiet. Mr. Hartwell left the restaurant quickly, but in his rush, he forgot to take one paper. It had slipped under his chair, and Maya found it when she was cleaning his table. The paper was covered with Aramaic symbols, but there were English notes written alongside them. One note said, "Verify historical accuracy for patent application." Another said, "Ancient algorithms, legal protection strategy." Maya folded the paper and put it in her apron. She would return it to him if he came back. But first she wanted to understand what she was seeing. That night, after her shift ended, Maya went home to her small apartment and turned on her computer. She typed Hartwell into the search engine and found hundreds of results. Alexander Hartwell was one of the richest men in America. He was 45 years old and had started a technology company called Hartwell Industries when he was just 25. The company created computer programs that could predict patterns in the stock market, weather, and even human behavior. These programs had made him billions of dollars. Maya read article after article about Alexander Hartwell. Most of them said he was a genius who had revolutionized how computers think and learn, but some recent articles told a different story. One article from last month had the headline, "Hartwell, Industries Under Investigation." It said that other technology companies were questioning how Alexander Hartwell had developed his revolutionary computer programs. They claimed that his methods were too advanced for one person to have created alone. Another article mentioned a big business deal that had suddenly stopped. Hartwell Industries was supposed to be bought by the government for $10 billion, but the deal had been put on hold. Government lawyers were asking for proof that Hartwell's technology was really his own invention. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She pulled out the paper that Alexander Hartwell had dropped and looked at it again. The Aramaic text was talking about mathematical calculations that could predict the future. The ancient people who wrote this had discovered ways to find patterns in nature and human behavior. But why would a modern businessman need ancient texts about mathematics? And why was he mixing old languages with computer terms and legal documents? Maya spent the next hour translating more of the Aramaic text. Her grandfather had taught her well, and she could understand most of it. The ancient writing described methods for calculating complex patterns. It talked about ways to predict when crops would grow best, when floods might come, and even how people might react to different situations. These were the same kinds of predictions that Hartwell's computer programs could make. Maya sat back in her chair and stared at the paper. Was Alexander Hartwell using ancient mathematical methods to create his modern technology? And if so, why was he being so secretive about it? She thought about the nervous way he had acted in the restaurant, and how quickly he had gathered up his papers when they fell. She remembered the phone call where he had sounded angry and worried. Maya realized that she might have stumbled onto something very important. Alexander Hartwell, one of the most powerful men in the world, was hiding something, and somehow her knowledge of ancient languages had given her a glimpse into his secret. The next morning, Maya went to work with the paper still in her purse. She wondered if Alexander Hartwell would come back to the restaurant, and if he did, what she should say to him. Should she give him back his paper and pretend she had not read it? Should she ask him about the ancient texts? Or should she keep quiet and try to learn more? Maya did not have to wait long for her answer. At exactly noon, Alexander Hartwell walked through the front door of Romano's, and this time he looked directly at her with an expression she could not quite understand. Alexander Hartwell walked straight to Maya's section and sat at the same corner table he had used before. This time he did not look nervous. Instead, he watched Maya with careful, intelligent eyes as she approached his table. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hartwell," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Water to start?" He looked surprised that she knew his name. "You know who I am?" Maya felt her cheeks turn red. I looked you up online after you dropped your papers the other day. I wanted to make sure I could return anything you might have lost." Alexander Hartwell studied her face for a long moment. "And did I lose anything?" Maya reached into her apron and pulled out the folded paper. "This fell under your chair." He took the paper and unfolded it slowly. His eyes moved over the Aramaic symbols and English notes. "Did you look at this?" Maya hesitated. She could lie and say no, but something told her that this man would know if she was not telling the truth. "Yes, sir." "I did. And what did you see?" "Ancient writing. Aramaic, I think, mixed with English notes about computers and patents." Alexander Hartwell's eyebrows went up. "You can read Aramaic?" "Some of it. My grandfather taught me ancient languages when I was young." For the first time since Maya had seen him, Alexander Hartwell smiled. It was not a warm smile, but it was not unfriendly either. It was the smile of someone who had just found something he had been looking for. "What else can you read?" he asked. "Sumerian, ancient Greek, some Hebrew, and bits of other old languages." "Why do you ask?" Instead of answering, Alexander Hartwell pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Cancel my 2 o'clock meeting," he said. "Something more important has come up." He put his phone away and looked at Maya again. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Chen, Maya Chen. Miss Chen, I need someone with your skills. Someone who can read and translate ancient documents. The work would be temporary, perhaps a week, but the pay would be substantial." Maya felt confused. "I don't understand. You're a technology businessman. Why do you need ancient documents translated?" Alexander Hartwell was quiet for a moment, as if he was deciding how much to tell her. "My company's technology is based on mathematical principles that have very old roots. I need to prove that these principles have historical precedent for legal reasons." "What kind of legal reasons?" "The kind that could save or destroy my company." His voice was serious now. "Miss Chen, I will pay you $10,000 for 1 week of translation work. Are you interested?" Maya's mouth fell open. $10,000 was more money than she made in 6 months at the restaurant. With that much money, she could pay off her credit cards, fix her car, and maybe even go back to school. But something about this felt wrong. Why would he pay so much money for translation work? And why was he being so secretive about what the documents contained? What exactly would I be translating? She asked. Ancient mathematical texts, calculations and formulas that were developed thousands of years ago. Nothing dangerous or illegal. Maya thought about her grandfather and what he would say. He had always taught her that knowledge was powerful, and that she should use her skills to help people. But he had also warned her to be careful about who she trusted. Can I think about it? She asked. Alexander Hartwell nodded. Of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow. Time is very important in this situation. He ordered a simple lunch and ate quietly while Maya worked. She could feel him watching her as she served other customers, and it made her nervous. When he finished eating, he left another generous tip and handed her a business card. My private number is on the back, he said. Call me when you have decided. After he left, Maya could not concentrate on her work. $10,000 was a life-changing amount of money for her. She could quit this job and focus on her studies. She could honor her grandfather's memory by using the skills he had taught her. But why was Alexander Hartwell really willing to pay so much? And what were these ancient mathematical texts that were so important to his business? During her break, Maya called her friend Rosa, who worked as a secretary at a law firm downtown. Rosa, have you heard anything about a company called Hartwell Industries having legal problems? Maya asked. Oh yes, Rosa said immediately. Everyone in the legal district is talking about it. Alexander Hartwell is in big trouble. The government wants to buy his company, but other tech companies are saying he stole their ideas. They're demanding proof that his technology is really his own invention. What happens if he can't prove it? He could lose everything. His company, his money. Maybe even go to jail if they can prove he actually stole something. Maya felt a cold feeling in her stomach. Thanks, Rosa. I have to go. That evening, Maya went to the public library and researched everything she could find about Hartwell Industries and Alexander Hartwell's technology. The more she read, the more confused she became. Hartwell's computer programs could predict incredibly complex patterns. They could tell when stock prices would go up or down, when natural disasters might happen, and even how large groups of people might behave in certain situations. This technology had made him billions of dollars and had impressed scientists around the world. But some experts were saying that this technology was too advanced. They claimed that it would take teams of scientists many years to develop such programs, not one person working alone. Maya found an interview with a computer science professor who said, Hartwell's algorithms are based on mathematical principles that seem to come from nowhere. It's as if he found some lost knowledge that nobody else has access to. Lost knowledge. Ancient mathematical principles. Maya thought about the Aramaic texts she had seen and the translations Alexander Hartwell was working on. Was he really using ancient mathematics to create modern technology? And if so, was there anything wrong with that? Maya spent hours thinking about what to do. Part of her was excited by the challenge of translating ancient texts and earning more money than she had ever had. But another part of her was worried about getting involved in something she did not fully understand. She thought about her grandfather and the stories he used to tell her about ancient civilizations. He had always said that old knowledge was precious and should be respected, not exploited. But Maya also thought about her own life. She was 26 years old, working as a waitress and struggling to pay her bills. This could be her chance to do something important with the skills her grandfather had taught her. The next morning, Maya made her decision. She called the number on Alexander Hartwell's business card. Mr. Hartwell, this is Maya Chen. I've decided to accept your offer. Excellent, he said. Can you start today? Maya looked around the restaurant where she had worked for 2 years. Tony, the manager, was not going to be happy about her asking for time off with no notice. I'll need to arrange things with my boss first, she said. Miss Chen, I'll pay you $15,000 if you can start today. Maya's heart started beating faster. $15,000. With that much money, she could change her entire life. I'll be there this afternoon, she said. Maya stood in front of the tall glass building that housed Hartwell Industries. The building reached up into the sky like a giant tower made of mirrors and steel. She had never been inside such an expensive-looking place before, and she felt nervous about what she might find. Alexander Hartwell met her in the fancy lobby, which had marble floors and expensive artwork on the walls. He looked different than he did in the restaurant. Here, surrounded by his own company, he seemed more confident and powerful. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming so quickly," he said, shaking her hand. "I hope you didn't have too much trouble with your manager." Maya thought about the angry conversation she had had with Tony that morning. He had not been happy about her sudden request for time off, especially with no advance notice. She had finally told him it was a family emergency, which was not exactly true, but it was the only way he would let her go. "It worked out fine," she said. Alexander Hartwell led her to a private elevator that required a special keycard to operate. As they rode up, Maya watched the numbers climb higher and higher. They passed the 10th floor, then the 20th, then the 30th. Finally, the elevator stopped at the 35th floor. "This floor is private," Alexander Hartwell explained as they stepped out. "Only a few people have access to it." Maya followed him down a long hallway lined with locked doors. At the end of the hallway, he used another key card to open a large wooden door. When Maya stepped inside, she could not believe what she saw. The room looked like a museum and a library combined. The walls were covered with glass cases containing ancient artifacts. Maya could see stone tablets covered with cuneiform writing, pieces of papyrus with Egyptian hieroglyphs, and scrolls that looked thousands of years old. Tall bookshelves filled with old leather-bound books lined the room. Computer monitors and modern equipment sat on tables next to ancient artifacts. It was like stepping into a place where the past and present existed together. "This is incredible," Maya whispered, walking slowly around the room. "Are these real?" "Every piece is authentic," Alexander Hartwell said with pride. "I've been collecting them for 20 years. Each artifact represents a piece of human knowledge that was almost lost forever." Maya stopped in front of a glass case containing a clay tablet covered with Sumerian writing. "This is over 4,000 years old," she said in amazement. "You can read it?" Maya studied the symbols carefully. "It's about mathematical calculations, something to do with predicting when rivers will flood." Alexander Hartwell smiled. "Exactly. The ancient Sumerians developed sophisticated methods for predicting natural patterns. They could calculate when floods would come, when crops should be planted, and when droughts might occur." Maya moved to another case containing Egyptian papyrus. "And this one is about astronomical calculations. The Egyptians were tracking the movement of planets and stars." "They were incredibly advanced," Alexander Hartwell agreed. "Much more advanced than most people realize." Maya spent the next hour exploring the room while Alexander Hartwell explained his collection. She saw Babylonian tablets about mathematical formulas, Greek scrolls about geometric principles, and Mayan documents about calendar calculations. "But I don't understand," Maya said finally. "What does this have to do with your computer technology?" Alexander Hartwell led her to a large table in the center of the room. On it were dozens of documents, both ancient and modern. These ancient civilizations developed mathematical principles that modern science is only beginning to understand, he explained. He picked up a translation of a Babylonian tablet. This document describes algorithms for predicting complex patterns in nature. The Babylonians could calculate when earthquakes might happen and when weather patterns would change. Maya looked at the translation, and then at the computer printouts next to it. The same mathematical concepts appeared in both documents, but the modern version was written in computer language. "You're using ancient mathematics to create modern computer programs?" she asked. "I'm rediscovering lost knowledge," Alexander Hartwell corrected. "These ancient scholars understood things about mathematics and nature that we forgot for thousands of years. I'm simply translating their wisdom into modern terms." Maya felt excited and confused at the same time. The idea of bringing ancient knowledge into the modern world seemed wonderful, but something about the way Alexander Hartwell talked about it made her uncomfortable. "What exactly do you need me to translate?" she asked. Alexander Hartwell led her to another table covered with documents. These texts contain references to what the ancients called the universal calculation method. It appears in documents from different civilizations: Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, and others. Maya looked at the documents. They were covered with different types of ancient writing, but she could see that they were all talking about similar mathematical concepts. The ancients believed that there was one mathematical principle that could predict patterns in everything: nature, human behavior, even future events. Alexander Hartwell continued. "I believe they were right, and I think I've found a way to recreate their methods using modern computers." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying these ancient people could predict the future? Not predict exactly, but calculate probability patterns with incredible accuracy. They could determine the most likely outcomes for almost any situation. Maya thought about what she had read online about Hartwell's technology. His computer programs could predict stock market changes, weather patterns, and human behavior. If he was really using ancient mathematical methods, then maybe those methods were more powerful than anyone realized. Why do you need these translations for legal reasons? She asked. Alexander Hartwell's expression became serious. Other companies are claiming that my technology is impossible for one person to have developed. They're saying I must have stolen their research or that I'm using methods that belong to them. And you want to prove that your methods are actually thousands of years old? Exactly. If I can show that these mathematical principles were discovered by ancient civilizations, then nobody can claim ownership of them. The knowledge belongs to all humanity. Maya looked around the room at all the ancient artifacts and documents. What Alexander Hartwell was saying made sense, but she still felt like there was something he was not telling her. How long have you been working on this? She asked. 25 years. I started collecting these documents when I was in college, long before I created my company. Everything I've built is based on rediscovering and modernizing ancient knowledge. Maya picked up one of the documents and began reading the ancient symbols. As she translated the text, she felt the same excitement she had always felt when working with old languages. These ancient people had been incredibly smart, and their knowledge had been lost for centuries. But as she read more, she also began to see warnings in the texts. The ancient writers talked about the power of their mathematical methods, but they also wrote about the dangers of using such knowledge incorrectly. One Sumerian text warned that the universal calculation method could be used to control the actions of many people. An Egyptian document mentioned that this knowledge should only be used by those who seek wisdom, not power. Maya looked up at Alexander Hartwell, who was watching her read. These documents contain warnings about misusing this knowledge, she said. Ancient superstitions, he replied quickly. These people were brilliant mathematicians, but they were also influenced by their religious beliefs. They thought their knowledge was magical rather than scientific. Maya was not so sure. Her grandfather had always taught her that ancient people were often wiser than modern people gave them credit for. If they had written warnings about their mathematical methods, maybe there was a good reason. But the excitement of working with such important documents was stronger than her concerns. This was the chance she had dreamed of, to use her skills to uncover lost knowledge and help bring ancient wisdom into the modern world. When do we start? She asked. Alexander Hartwell smiled. Right now. For 3 days, Maya worked in Alexander Hartwell's secret library, translating ancient documents from morning until night. She had never been so focused on anything in her life. The texts were like pieces of a giant puzzle, and with each translation she could see the picture becoming clearer. The ancient civilizations had indeed discovered something remarkable. They had found mathematical methods that could predict patterns in almost everything, from the movement of stars to the behavior of groups of people. What amazed Maya most was that these different cultures, separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, had all discovered similar principles. The Babylonians called it the Great Calculation. The Egyptians referred to it as the mathematics of Ma'at, their word for cosmic order. The Greeks wrote about the universal equation, but they were all describing the same thing. On her 4th day, Maya made a discovery that changed everything. She was translating a damaged Sumerian tablet when she found a section that had been partially broken away. Using her knowledge of Sumerian grammar and comparing it to similar texts, she was able to fill in the missing pieces. What she read made her hands tremble. The tablet described not just mathematical calculations, but a complete system for influencing human behavior on a large scale. The ancient Sumerians had discovered that by understanding certain patterns, they could predict how groups of people would react to specific situations. More importantly, they could create situations that would make people act in predictable ways. Maya read the text 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she looked at the computer printouts that Alexander Hartwell had shown her. The modern algorithms were doing exactly what the ancient text described, predicting and influencing human behavior. Mr. Hartwell, Maya called out. He was working at his computer across the room. What is it, Miss Chen? Have you found something interesting? Maya held up the tablet translation. This text describes methods for controlling how people think and act. Is that what your computer programs do? Alexander Hartwell walked over and read her translation. His eyes lit up with excitement. This is exactly what I was looking for. You found the missing piece. But Mr. Hartwell, this isn't just about predicting patterns. This is about manipulating people. It's about understanding human nature, he corrected. If we can predict how people will behave, we can create better policies, prevent conflicts, and make society more efficient. Maya felt uncomfortable with his answer. But who decides what's better? And what if this power is used for the wrong reasons? Alexander Hartwell sat down across from her. Miss Chen, every powerful tool can be used for good or bad purposes. Fire can warm a home or burn it down. Electricity can light a city or power weapons. The question is not whether to use the tool, but how to use it responsibly. Maya wanted to believe him, but the warnings in the ancient texts kept echoing in her mind. She had found similar warnings in documents from different civilizations, and they all said the same thing. This knowledge was dangerous if used by the wrong people. What exactly are you planning to do with these translations? She asked. Alexander Hartwell hesitated, as if he was deciding how much to tell her. The government wants to buy my company and use my technology to improve national security. They believe my algorithms could help prevent terrorist attacks, predict economic problems, and maintain social stability. Maya thought about what that would mean. If the government could predict and influence how people behaved, they would have incredible power over citizens. They could prevent people from protesting, control election outcomes, or silence opposition voices. And the other companies that are challenging you? They want this technology for themselves. Some want to use it for advertising, to make people buy specific products. Others want to use it for political campaigns, to influence how people vote. Maya felt sick to her stomach. So everyone wants this technology to control people? They want it to influence people, yes. But Miss Chen, people are already being influenced every day. Every advertisement, every news story, every social media post is designed to change how people think and act. My technology simply makes the process more precise and predictable. Maya spent the rest of the day thinking about what Alexander Hartwell had told her. He was right that people were constantly being influenced by others. But there seemed to be a big difference between individual influence and the kind of large-scale control that his technology could provide. That evening, she called her old professor, Dr. Rodriguez, who had studied ancient cultures. She did not tell him about her work with Alexander Hartwell, but she asked him about ancient mathematical systems and whether they had ever been used to control people. That's a fascinating question, Maya, Dr. Rodriguez said. There are legends and stories about ancient rulers who used mathematical knowledge to maintain power. The Egyptians, for example, used their understanding of astronomy and mathematics to convince people that the pharaohs were connected to the gods. Do you think such systems actually worked? Probably to some extent. If you can predict when eclipses will happen, or when floods will come, people will believe you have special knowledge. And if people believe you have special power, they're more likely to do what you tell them to do. Maya thought about this conversation as she worked the next day. She was translating a Greek text that described how certain mathematical principles could be used to guide the actions of the multitude for the greater good. But the text also contained warnings about those who would use such knowledge for personal gain rather than the benefit of all. The more she translated, the more conflicted Maya felt. The ancient knowledge was truly remarkable, and part of her was excited to be uncovering such important historical information. But another part of her was worried about how this knowledge was being used in the modern world. On her 6th day of work, Maya found something that made her decision for her. She was translating an Egyptian papyrus when she discovered a section about the Great Abandonment. According to the text, the ancient Egyptian priests had deliberately stopped using their most powerful mathematical methods because they realized the knowledge was too dangerous. The calculations grant great power over the minds of men, the text read. But such power corrupts even the wisest hearts. We have seen kings become tyrants and priests become false gods. Therefore, we bury this knowledge so that future generations might not repeat our mistakes. Maya stared at the translation for a long time. The ancient Egyptians had possessed the same knowledge that Alexander Hartwell was trying to recreate. and they had chosen to abandon it because they realized it was too dangerous. She looked around the room at all the artifacts and documents. Alexander Hartwell had spent 25 years collecting this knowledge, but the people who had originally created it had decided it should be forgotten. Maya realized that she had to make a choice. She could complete her translations and help Alexander Hartwell prove his legal case, or she could find a way to stop him from using this dangerous knowledge. But how could one waitress with a knowledge of ancient languages stand up against one of the most powerful men in the world? As she pondered this question, Maya heard Alexander Hartwell on the phone in his office. He was talking to someone about final implementation and full deployment within 6 months. He sounded excited and confident, like someone who was about to achieve a long-sought goal. Maya made her decision. She would finish her translations, but she would also find a way to warn people about what Alexander Hartwell was really planning to do. The ancient civilizations had trusted her with their warnings, and she could not ignore them. But first, she needed to understand exactly how Alexander Hartwell's technology worked and who he planned to use it against. Only then could she figure out how to stop him. On her 7th and final day of work, Maya arrived early at Alexander Hartwell's building. She had barely slept the night before, thinking about everything she had discovered. Today she planned to finish her translations and find a way to learn more about how Hartwell's technology was actually being used. Alexander Hartwell seemed excited when he met her at the elevator. "Miss Chen, your work has been extraordinary. The translations you've provided are exactly what I needed for my legal case." "I'm glad I could help," Maya said, though she did not feel glad at all. As they rode up to the 35th floor, Alexander Hartwell continued talking. "In fact, your work has been so valuable that I'd like to offer you a permanent position with my company. You could continue translating ancient documents and help me develop new applications for historical knowledge." Maya's heart started beating faster. A permanent job with Alexander Hartwell would mean more money than she had ever dreamed of having. She could quit waitressing forever and work with ancient languages every day, but she also knew that accepting his offer would make her part of something she was not sure was right. "That's very generous," she said carefully. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but I hope you'll consider it seriously. People with your skills are very rare." When they reached the private library, Maya went to work on the final documents. These were the most important texts, the ones that contained complete descriptions of the universal calculation method that different ancient civilizations had discovered. As she translated, Maya began to understand just how powerful this ancient knowledge really was. The texts described mathematical formulas that could predict not just individual behavior, but the actions of entire populations. They explained how to create specific situations that would make large groups of people respond in predictable ways. One Babylonian tablet described how to use these methods to ensure the loyalty of subjects and prevent rebellion against rightful authority. A Greek scroll explained how to guide public opinion toward desired outcomes and maintain social order through calculated influence. Maya realized that this was not just about predicting human behavior. It was about controlling it on a massive scale. Around noon, Alexander Hartwell received a phone call that changed everything for Maya. He took the call in his office, but he spoke loudly enough that she could hear most of the conversation. "Yes, the translations are complete," he said. "We can move forward with the final phase." No, she doesn't know about the broader applications. The government contract will give us access to social media data, voting records, and consumer behavior patterns for the entire population. Yes, we'll be able to influence election outcomes, control public opinion about government policies, and prevent social unrest. Maya felt cold all over. Alexander Hartwell was not just using ancient knowledge to create computer programs. He was planning to use this technology to control how people thought and voted. The government was not buying his company to improve national security. They were buying it to control the American people. She continued listening as Alexander Hartwell's conversation continued. "The other tech companies won't be able to compete once we have government backing. No, there's no way they can prove where the algorithms came from. The historical precedent research is perfect. By next year, we'll be able to predict and influence virtually any aspect of human behavior on a national scale." Maya felt sick. She had been helping Alexander Hartwell prove that his technology was based on ancient knowledge. But what she had really been doing was helping him gain the legal right to control people's minds. When Alexander Hartwell finished his phone call, he came back to the library with a big smile on his face. Excellent news, Miss Chen. My legal team says your translations provide perfect proof that my methods have historical precedent. No one will be able to challenge my ownership of this technology now. Maya tried to act normal, but inside she was panicking. What happens next? The government will finalize their purchase of my company within the next month. Then we'll begin implementing the technology on a much larger scale. What kind of implementation? Alexander Hartwell seemed happy to explain, probably because he thought Maya was going to become his employee. We'll start by analyzing social media data to understand how different groups of people think and feel about important issues. Then we'll create targeted campaigns to influence their opinions in ways that promote social stability. You mean you'll make people think what the government wants them to think? We'll help people make better decisions, Alexander Hartwell corrected. We'll reduce political extremism, prevent economic panic, and maintain social harmony. Imagine a world where there are no more riots, no more market crashes, no more divisive elections. Our technology can create that kind of stability. Maya thought about the warnings in the ancient texts. The Egyptian priests had abandoned this knowledge because they realized it made kings into tyrants. The Sumerian scholars had written about the dangers of using such power for personal gain, rather than the good of all people. But who decides what's better for people? Maya asked. And what if the people in charge of this technology become corrupt? Alexander Hartwell's expression became less friendly. Miss Chen, every government has to make decisions about what's best for its citizens. Our technology simply makes those decisions more effective. Maya realized that Alexander Hartwell truly believed he was doing the right thing. In his mind, he was bringing lost wisdom back to the world to help solve modern problems. But he could not see that he was also giving a small group of people unprecedented power over everyone else. That afternoon, Maya finished her final translation. It was a Sumerian text that contained the complete mathematical formulas for the universal calculation method. As she wrote out the English translation, she felt like she was handing someone a weapon. This is perfect, Alexander Hartwell said as he read her work. With these formulas, we can prove that our algorithms are based on authentic ancient knowledge that predates any modern technology company. He handed Maya an envelope. Your payment plus a bonus for excellent work. I hope you'll consider my job offer. Maya took the envelope, knowing it contained more money than she had ever had at one time. But the money felt heavy in her hands, like it was made of lead instead of paper. I need some time to think about the job offer, she said. Of course. Take all the time you need. As Maya left the building, she felt like she was carrying a terrible secret. She had helped one of the most powerful men in America gain legal ownership of technology that could control how people thought and acted. And in just a few weeks, the government would have access to that technology. That night, Maya sat in her apartment and thought about what to do. She could keep the money and pretend she had never learned about Alexander Hartwell's real plans. She could take his job offer and become wealthy while helping him develop even more powerful ways to control people. Or she could try to find a way to warn others about what was happening. Maya thought about her grandfather and the stories he had told her about ancient civilizations. He had always said that knowledge was power, but he had also taught her that power came with responsibility. The ancient priests and scholars had tried to warn future generations about the dangers of their mathematical methods. Now it was Maya's turn to decide whether those warnings should be heeded or ignored. She picked up her phone and started searching for the contact information of investigative journalists who wrote about technology companies. If she was going to expose Alexander Hartwell's plans, she would need help from people who knew how to get the truth to the public. But she also knew that once she made this choice, there would be no going back. Alexander Hartwell was one of the most powerful men in the world, and he would not forgive someone who tried to destroy his life's work. Maya looked at the envelope full of money sitting on her table. Then she looked at the translations she had made, knowing that they contained both incredible ancient wisdom and the seeds of modern tyranny. She had to decide. Would she use her knowledge to help one man gain power over millions of people? Or would she use it to try to protect those people from that power? Maya spent the entire night making copies of all her translations and the notes she had taken about Alexander Hartwell's plans. She used her phone to take pictures of the most important documents, being careful to capture both the ancient symbols and her English translations. As the sun came up, Maya made her final decision. She could not let Alexander Hartwell use ancient wisdom to control modern people. Her grandfather had taught her that knowledge should be used to help humanity, not to manipulate it. Maya found the contact information for Sarah Kim, an investigative journalist who wrote for the Washington Tribune. Sarah Kim had written several articles about technology companies and government contracts, and Maya hoped she would understand the importance of this story. At 8 in the morning, Maya called the newspaper. Washington Tribune, this is Sarah Kim. Ms. Kim, my name is Maya Chen. I have information about Alexander Hartwell and Hartwell Industries that I think you should know about. There was a pause. What kind of information? Information about how his technology really works and what the government plans to do with it. Can you be more specific? Maya took a deep breath. Mr. Hartwell is using ancient mathematical methods to create technology that can control how people think and act. The government is buying his company so they can use this technology to influence elections and control public opinion. Sarah Kim was quiet for a moment. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I have translations of ancient documents that prove where his technology comes from, and I overheard conversations about how it's going to be used. Can you meet me today? 3 hours later, Maya sat in a coffee shop downtown, showing Sarah Kim all the evidence she had gathered. Sarah Kim examined the translations carefully and asked many questions about ancient languages and mathematical methods. This is incredible, Sarah Kim said finally. If what you're telling me is true, this could be the biggest technology scandal in years. It's all true, Maya said. I translated those documents myself. Sarah Kim looked at Maya carefully. You understand that Alexander Hartwell will probably sue you for breaking your confidentiality agreement, and that he might try to ruin your reputation? Maya nodded. I know. But I can't let him use this technology to control people. The ancient civilizations that created this knowledge abandoned it because they realized it was too dangerous. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah Kim worked with Maya to verify all the information and find additional sources. They contacted computer science experts who confirmed that Hartwell's algorithms were indeed unusually advanced. They spoke with government officials who admitted that the planned purchase of Hartwell Industries was about more than just national security. Sarah Kim also helped Maya contact Dr. Rodriguez, her old professor, who provided expert analysis of the ancient texts and confirmed that Maya's translations were accurate. These documents are remarkable, Dr. Rodriguez told Sarah Kim. They show that ancient civilizations had mathematical knowledge that we're only rediscovering now. But they also contain clear warnings about the dangers of using such knowledge to control people. Meanwhile, Alexander Hartwell tried to contact Maya several times. He left messages asking about his job offer and wondering why she had not returned his calls. Maya did not respond, but she knew he would figure out what she was doing soon enough. 2 weeks after their first meeting, Sarah Kim published her article. The headline read, Tech Billionaire Uses Ancient Mathematics to Create Mind Control Technology for Government. The article explained everything. How Alexander Hartwell had collected ancient documents for 25 years, how he had used Maya to translate crucial texts, and how he planned to use this technology to influence American citizens on a massive scale. The story created a huge controversy. Other technology companies demanded investigations into Hartwell's methods. Civil rights groups protested against the government's plan to purchase mind control technology. Congress called for hearings about the ethical implications of using such powerful influence tools. Within 24 hours of the article's publication, Maya received a call from Alexander Hartwell's lawyers. They threatened to sue her for breaking her confidentiality agreement and demanded that she stop talking to the media. But Maya also received calls from other journalists, university professors, and even some government officials who wanted to learn more about the ancient documents and their modern applications. The government investigation that followed was thorough and damaging to Alexander Hartwell. Investigators found that his technology was indeed capable of influencing human behavior on a large scale, and that he had been testing it on social media users without their knowledge or consent. The planned government purchase of Hartwell Industries was canceled. Several other countries banned the import of Hartwell's technology. Stock prices for Hartwell Industries collapsed, and Alexander Hartwell lost billions of dollars. Maya faced legal challenges for months. Alexander Hartwell's lawyers sued her for breach of contract and theft of trade secrets. Maya had to hire her own lawyer, which used up most of the money she had earned from the translation work. But Maya also received support from unexpected places. Dr. Rodriguez helped her find a lawyer who specialized in whistleblower cases. Several universities offered her scholarships to continue her education. The American Civil Liberties Union praised her courage in exposing dangerous technology. 6 months after the story broke, Maya was called to testify before a congressional committee that was investigating the ethical use of artificial intelligence. She explained how ancient mathematical methods could be used to influence modern behavior, and why the warnings of ancient scholars should be taken seriously. The people who created this knowledge thousands of years ago were incredibly wise, Maya told the committee. They understood that mathematical power over human behavior was too dangerous for any one person or group to control. We should listen to their warnings. The congressional hearings led to new laws regulating how artificial intelligence could be used to influence human behavior. Companies were required to disclose when they were using algorithms to influence people's decisions, and government agencies were banned from using such technology on American citizens without court approval. Alexander Hartwell's empire did not recover from the scandal. His company went bankrupt, and he faced criminal charges for unauthorized experimentation on human subjects. The ancient artifacts and documents in his private collection were donated to museums and universities, where scholars could study them openly. Maya used the scholarship money she received to return to school and complete her degree in ancient languages and history. She specialized in studying how ancient knowledge could be applied to modern problems in ethical ways. 3 years later, Maya became a professor at a community college, teaching courses on ancient civilizations and the history of mathematics. She often told her students about the importance of using knowledge responsibly and learning from the wisdom of the past. Maya also worked as a consultant for museums and universities, helping them translate ancient documents and understand their historical significance. She made sure that her translations were always made public, so that no one person could control access to ancient knowledge. In her spare time, Maya wrote a book about her experience with Alexander Hartwell and the lessons that modern society could learn from ancient civilizations. The book became popular with people who were interested in both history and technology ethics. Knowledge is like fire, Maya often told her students, repeating something her grandfather had taught her. It can warm your home and cook your food, but it can also burn down your house if you're not careful. The ancient people who created this mathematical knowledge understood its power, and they tried to warn us about its dangers. The least we can do is listen to their warnings and use their wisdom responsibly. Maya never regretted her decision to expose Alexander Hartwell's plans, even though it had cost her money and caused her legal problems. She had honored her grandfather's memory by using her knowledge to protect people rather than control them. And sometimes, when she was translating particularly beautiful ancient texts about mathematics and human nature, Maya felt like she could hear the voices of those long-dead scholars, thanking her for making sure their warnings were not forgotten. The ancient knowledge was safe now, preserved in universities and museums where it could be studied openly by anyone who wanted to learn from it. And Maya had played her part in making sure that the wisdom of the past would be used to build a better future, not to control it.